Okay, Bismillah, you're live.
Okay, in the name of, we're live, Abdullah?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, in the name of Allah, may peace and salutations be upon the Prophet Muhammad and upon his family and companions to the day of resurrection. To proceed, we warmly welcome you for another evening of lectures and beneficial knowledge. And again, we are delighted to have our respected Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Maliki, joining us and delivering a lecture this evening entitled, Why Do We Fast in Ramadan? So this is in preparation for the month of Ramadan. And it's also important for me to note at this stage that we are in the process of organizing a Ramadan program for everyone. It's a program that we envisage will run from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock on a daily basis during Ramadan, so that you can benefit from half an hour of signed Quran and recitation and English translation and sign, followed by a half hour of a lecture or a talk by one of our scholars, as arranged by our Sheikh, an elder, Sheikh Muhammad al-Maliki. So that's a really exciting program that we're going to have, that will be broadcast via YouTube and via the website, and it will be advertised on Instagram and other means. So we're really looking forward to that. But for tonight's lecture, why do we fast in Ramadan? Again, we present our Sheikh Muhammad al-Maliki. فليتفضلوا مشكورا.
بسم الله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على محمد رسول الله سيد الأولين والآخرين وإمام الأنبياء والمرسلين والشافع المشفع يوم الدين، وعلى آله الطيبين وأزواجه الطاهرات أمهات المؤمنين وصحابته الغر الميامين ومن استنى بسنته واهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، حياكم الله أيها الإخوة والأخوات أينما كنتم إلى هذا اللقاء المتجدد، اللقاء الأسبوعي المتجدد. ونحن في هذه الأيام بانتظار قدوم ضيف عزيز على قلب كل مسلم، هو شهر رمضان الذي نسأل الله عز وجل أن يهله علينا ونحن في أتم صحة وعافية وسلامة في اعتقاد واتباع وعبادة وزيادة في البر والتقوى. نعم.
Indeed, all praises are due to Allah, and may the most complete and full salutations be showered upon his Prophet Muhammad, who was sent as an intercessor for those who gain the right for intercession. And may Allah also shower peace and salutations upon his family and his pure companions, his pure wives, those who are pure, and those who follow them until the day of resurrection. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. May Allah's peace be upon you, and I will warmly welcome you to this continuing meeting, this continuing lesson that we have, weekly lesson that we have, whereby we talk about matters relating to Islamic knowledge. And we find ourselves now that we are waiting upon a great guest that will come upon us, and it's a guest who is, or that is, really dear to the heart of the Muslim. And that guest is none other than the month of Ramadan. And we ask Allah, the Most High, that we are able, with his success, to meet this month and to enter this month in being in the best of condition in terms of our health, in terms of our worship, and in terms of our belief and our faith and our level and degree of faith.
أما موضوعنا هذه الليلة فهو موضوع غاية في الأهمية، وهو أمر ينبغي لكل مسلم أن يستحضره في قلبه وهو يستقبل شهر الصوم، وهو لماذا نصوم رمضان؟ نعم.
As for tonight's lecture, then the title is Why Do We Fast in Ramadan? And this is a topic that is of great importance to everyone. And it's of great importance to the Muslims, and it's something that we should have at the fore of our hearts and our intentions when we fast the month of Ramadan.
وهذا الموضوع أهميته تكمن من حيث تأثير هذه العبادة لمن فهم مقصد الشريعة من هذه العبادة.
And this importance of realizing why we worship Allah in the month of Ramadan by fasting, it brings life to the worship that we do, and it brings the point of why we're doing really, really clear for the worshipper.
وهذا المقصد من الصوم بينه الله عز وجل في كتابه العزيز، حيث قال في سورة البقرة في الآية 83 بعد 100: يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. فبين الله عز وجل المقصد من تشريع هذه العبادة وفرضيتها ولذلك جعلت فريضة على كل الأمم، ليس في رمضان تحديدا، وإنما فرضت كعبادة على سائر الأمم لأنها من العبادات الرئيسية، والعبادات الرئيسية فرضت على جميع الأمم كالصلاة كالتوحيد والصلاة والصيام والزكاة والحج، كلها فرضت على جميع الأمم. فالصيام فرض على جميع الأمم وفرض على أمة محمد في رمضان. المقصد الأسمى منه هو تحصيل التقوى. نعم.
So Allah the Most High, He explains the reason for the legislating of this month in His book, and He explains the intent behind the reason that we fast in His book in the second chapter of the Quran, the chapter of the cow, verse 183, where Allah says, "O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you as it was prescribed upon those who came before you, so that you can attain God consciousness." And this is the principle of taqwa, which I've translated as God consciousness, awareness of Allah. And this ayah, this verse, it explains explicitly the reason behind the legislation of fasting. And fasting here, we see that Allah made it an obligation upon us. And it was made an obligation upon us during the month of Ramadan. So this is our period or our season of obligatory fasting. Fasting was also made obligatory upon the previous nations, upon the nations that came before us, as fasting is one of the principal forms of worship that Allah legislates and Allah orders with in His religion. So these principal aspects or principal types of worship include monotheism, so worshipping Allah alone. They include performing the prayer to Him and Him alone. They involve giving in charity, fasting, making pilgrimage. All of these acts of worship are acts of worship that were obligatory or upon the previous nations as well, but in different forms. So fasting, it was obligatory upon the previous nations. However, our fasting that was made obligatory is the fasting in the month of Ramadan. And yes, and it was made obligatory upon us so that we can attain this quality of being aware of Allah the Most High.
وهذه التقوى هي أعلى المطالب لكل طالب للجنة، ولهذا أمر الله عز وجل بها جميع عباده بما فيهم الأنبياء، بما فيهم الأنبياء، بل أمر سيد الأنبياء وإمام الأنبياء بها، فقال يا أيها النبي اتق الله، قال يا أيها النبي اتق الله. فالتقوى غاية عظيمة، بل هي الغاية العظمى، لأن بها يتوصل إلى الجنة ويتقى عذاب النار. نعم.
And this quality of attaining consciousness of Allah the Most High, this is one of the greatest objectives that the individual can have. And the person who would like to attain paradise, then this is the way in which they are to do so, i.e. through consciousness or taqwa of Allah the Most High. And Allah has ordered all of the messengers to have consciousness of him, and rather he has ordered the best and the greatest of his messengers to have this quality, whereby he said that which means, O Prophet, fear Allah. So this quality of having fear of Allah and consciousness of Allah, it's a very, very great goal, and it's a very great quality to have, because through this quality the individual will do those things that draw them near to Allah's paradise and his pleasure, and they will abstain from those things that earn his displeasure and earn his anger and his punishment.
وإذا فهم الإنسان معنى التقوى سهل عليه العمل بها، فإن من معاني التقوى الواردة في القرآن هي الوقاية، كما قال الله عز وجل في سورة الدخان في الآية 56 قال عن المؤمنين قال ووقاهم عذاب الجحيم، ووقاهم عذاب الجحيم. وقال سبحانه وتعالى في سورة الطور في الآية 18 ووقاهم ربهم عذاب الجحيم. ففي هاتين الآيتين بين الله عز وجل أن التقوى هنا هي الوقاية والحماية من هذا العذاب، ولهذا قال في سورة الزمر في الآية 24 أفمن يتقي بوجهه سوء العذاب يوم القيامة، أي أنه يتقي بقصده وجه الله عز وجل عذاب النار، عذاب يوم القيامة. فهذا من أبرز وأبين معاني التقوى، وهو أن تتقي أي تحتمي، تجعل حاجزا بينك وبين عذاب الله. نعم.
And this term that we have translated, or that I've translated, as God consciousness or awareness of Allah, this is something that the Sheikh is now going on to explain. And he mentions that it's referred to in the Quran with the meaning of being something that brings about protection. And if the individual understands this and they understand what taqwa means, it becomes easier for them to act upon it and to put it into practice. So in essence, this God consciousness, it's a means of protection. And Allah mentions in Surah Ad-Dukhan, the chapter of the smoke, that indeed your Lord, he protected them from the punishment of the hellfire. And this protection here, the linguistically, the verb format, it's similar to this quality of having God consciousness. So protection. And he mentions in verse number 18 of the chapter of the Tur, which is the name of the mountain, and he protected them from a punishment, from a grave punishment. And again, we see it with the meaning of protection. And Allah mentions in the chapter of the troops, Surah Az-Zumar, in verse number 24, are those who will only have their bare faces to shield themselves from the awful torment on Judgment Day better than those in paradise. So here the Sheikh is using this as an example, and we have this verb form again, which I've translated as consciousness of Allah. Here it means to shield themselves. So in essence, one of the clearest and most manifest meanings of this term, of this comprehensive term, is a protection or a barrier that saves an individual from the punishment of Allah the Most High.
وقد وردت عدة تعاريف للسلف عن معنى التقوى. أكثر من 10 تعاريف وردت عن السلف الصالح. من ذلك ما ورد عند ابن أبي شيبة في المصنف بسند صحيح عن طلق بن حبيب أنه قال: إذا وقعت الفتن فأطفئوها بالتقوى. قالوا: وما التقوى؟ قال: هي أن تعمل بطاعة الله على نور من الله رجاء رحمة الله، والتقوى ترك معاصي الله على نور من الله مخافة عذاب الله. فهذا تعريف جامع ماتع عرف به هذا التابعي الجليل طلق بن حبيب، وله شواهده من القرآن والسنة. نعم.
And the early Muslims, they had many different definitions of this comprehensive term of God consciousness, this comprehensive term at-taqwa. They had many of them, and when we look at them, we can see that there are more than 10. There are many of these different definitions that they have, and we will look at one of them now, and that's what's been reported by Ibn Abi Shayba, one of the scholars of Hadith, in his book Al-Musannaf, in an authentic narration on the authority of Talq ibn Habib, who said to the people, and he advised the people, when the trials and tribulations befall you, then deflect them or push them away by having this quality of taqwa, by having this quality of God consciousness. And then the people asked him, they said, what does it mean to have this? What does this quality of taqwa, of God consciousness mean? And then he answered, and then he gave his definition. He said, it's that you act in obedience to Allah upon a light from Allah, looking or hoping or desiring for the reward from Allah, and also that you abstain from disobedience to Allah upon a light from Allah, upon guidance from Allah, out of fear of the punishment of Allah. And this, in actuality, this is a comprehensive definition for this term, and it's a definition that has many supporting evidences in the texts.
نعم. وقد أورد البغوي في تفسيره أثرا عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما يعرف فيه التقوى فيقول: التقوى ألا ترى نفسك خيرا من أحد. التقوى ألا ترى نفسك خيرا من أحد. نعم.
And also the Imam, the scholar Al-Baghawi, he mentions on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with them both, that he said that this quality of taqwa, of having God consciousness, is that you do not see yourself better than anyone else.
وكذلك أورد البغوي، هناك البغوي أورد أثر ابن عمر في التفسير، وهنا في شرح السنة أورد أثرا عن عمر بن عبد العزيز الذي عرف بالخليفة الخامس، أنه قال: التقي ملجم، يعني وضع عليه لجام كالخير إذا وضع عليها اللجام لا تتحرك إلا وفق ما يريد قائدها. قال: لا يفعل كل ما يريد، التقي ملجم لا يفعل كل ما يريد، وإنما يفعل ما يريد الله منه. نعم.
And this narration that we have just mentioned, that this scholar Al-Baghawi, he reported on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar, this was in his tafsir, in his explanation of the Quran. And here we have the same scholar, Imam Al-Baghawi, he mentions another narration. However, this time in his book, Sharh al-Sunnah, the explanation of the creed or the example of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in a narration on the authority of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And he was a great Imam, and he was known as the fifth rightly guided caliph of the Muslims. And Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he mentioned and he said, the individual who has this quality of God consciousness is like the person who is restrained, or who has, they are tied by the reins, like the reins that a horse has. So they are tied by these reins such that they cannot do anything that they want to do. Rather, what they do that which their Lord wants them to. So they are restricted. They are restricted in this manner.
وكذلك أورد السيوطي في كتابه الدر المنثور أن رجلا سأل أبا هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه عن التقوى، فقال له أبو هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه: هل أخذت طريقا ذات شوك؟ قال: نعم. قال: فكيف كنت تصنع إذا رأيت الشوك؟ قال: أعدل عنها، يعني أنحرف عنها قليل، أو جاوزتها يعني تخطيتها، أو قصرت عنها أي توقفت، لم أتجاوز ذلك المكان الذي فيه الشوك. قال أبو هريرة عندئذ: ذاك التقوى، أي فكذلك التقوى. وبنحوه سأل عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه أبي بن كعب، فقال له: ما التقوى؟ قال أبي لعمر: هل سلكت يوما طريقا ذات شوك؟ قال: نعم. قال: فما كنت تصنع؟ قال: كنت حذرا ومشمرا، يعني رافعا ثوبي حتى أرى أين تقع قدمي من أجل أن يجتنب الشوك. فهذا تفسير من تفاسير التقوى عند السلف. نعم.
And it's been mentioned by the Imam As-Suyuti in his book Ad-Durr al-Manthur, in one of his books that he authored, that an individual asked Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, about taqwa, about this quality. And he asked him, what is this quality and what does it mean? Abu Hurairah said to him, have you ever taken a path that has thorns on it, or a kind of treacherous path? And he said, yes. So he said, okay, how did you deal with this? What did you do? And the man said, I either divert and do not actually walk down this path. I go somewhere else, or I stop and I do not go any further on my journey. And he said, this is like taqwa. This is the same as having this quality of God consciousness. And it's also been reported شيخنا رواية عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه في نفس الكتاب لإمام
لا ليس في نفس الكتاب ليس في نفس
حفظكم الله. And it's also been reported on the authority of Umar ibn al-Khattab.
تقصد يعني في سؤال عمر لأبي؟
أي نعم.
نعم هو في الدر المنثور. نعم.
حفظكم الله. And it's also been mentioned in the same book that Umar ibn al-Khattab, he asked Ubay ibn Ka'ab, he asked him the very same question and said, what is this quality of God consciousness? What do you know of it? And Ubay ibn Ka'ab, he gave the same answer. He said, have you ever traversed a path, or have you ever been down a path where there are thorns and it's treacherous? And Umar said yes. He replied in the affirmative. And then Ubay asked him, so what did you do? How did you traverse this path? And Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, said, I lifted my thobe and I was very, very careful. I lifted my garment, my clothes. So the thobe is the long shirt, Justin. So I lifted it and I brought it inwards so that it wouldn't be caught by the thorns, and I could see where the thorns are so that I wouldn't step on them, so that I could avoid them. And Ubay mentioned this is the same as having this quality of taqwa, of this quality of God consciousness.
ومما ذكر عن التقوى ما جاء عند ابن الأثير في جامع الأصول عن الإمام مالك بن أنس إمام دار الهجرة رحمه الله أنه قال بلغني أن رجلا من الفقهاء كتب إلى ابن الزبير إلى عبد الله بن الزبير يقول ألا إن لأهل التقوى علامات يعرفون بها ويعرفونها من أنفسهم من رضي بالقضاء وصبر على البلاء وشكر على النعماء وصدق في اللسان ووفى بالوعد والعهد وتلا أحكام القرآن وإنما الإمام سوق من الأسواق فإن كان من أهل الحق حمل إليه أهل الحق حقهم وإن كان من أهل الباطل حمل إليه أهل الباطل باطلهم. فهكذا كان السلف يتعاملون مع التقوى ويفهمونها. نعم.
And it's also been reported in the book of Ibn Athir, one of the scholars, the book called Jami' al-Usul, or the Comprehensive Fundamentals, that Imam Malik, the Imam and the scholar of Medina, he mentioned, it has reached me that an individual from the scholars of jurisprudence, they asked Abdullah ibn az-Zubair, شيخنا ممكن تعيد الرواية فقرة فقرة حتى وترجمة.
نعم. قال ألا إن لأهل التقوى علامات يعرفون بها ويعرفونها من أنفسهم.
He said, and he asked, do the people who have this quality of taqwa, of God consciousness, do they have characteristics that they know themselves and that they are known by? So how do we identify these people?
كأن هنا لبس قليل في الترجمة. هو لم يسأل بل هو يقرر له، يقول له ألا إن لأهل التقوى علامات يعرفون بها ويعرفونها من أنفسهم.
So he wasn't. من القائل شيخنا؟ الرجل الفقيه.
الإمام مالك. الإمام مالك يقول أن رجلا كتب إلى ابن الزبير، رجلا من الفقهاء، فقيه من الفقهاء، كتب إلى ابن الزبير يقول له أن أهل التقوى لهم علامات.
بارك الله فيكم.
قال نعم.
حفظكم الله. So Imam Malik mentions that one of the scholars wrote to Abdullah ibn az-Zubayr, and he said to him, indeed, the people who have this characteristic of God consciousness, indeed they have signs and they have characteristics that they are known by and that they know themselves, that they know that they have.
نعم. ثم بدأ يبين ما هذه العلامات. قال من رضي بالقضاء يعني بالقدر وصبر على البلاء وشكر على النعماء. نعم. ناخذها واحدة واحدة. أوكي.
هذا جيد شيخنا حفظكم الله. So then he started explaining these characteristics, and he said the individual who, or those who are pleased with the decree of Allah, those things that befall them, they are pleased with these things. Secondly, that they have patience or they have patience upon trials and tribulations that befall them. And thirdly, they give thanks to those things that they are granted and that they are bestowed.
وصدق في اللسان يعني لا يكذب، ووفى بالوعد والعهد، وتلا أحكام القرآن يعني وعمل بما فيه من أحكام. نعم.
In addition to this, they are truthful in their speech, i.e. they do not lie. When they give promises and they give their word, they do not break these promises and they fulfill their word that they give. And they act upon the Quran, i.e. they act in accordance to the orders and the guidance of the Quran.
ثم ذكر كلاما مفسرا لكل ما تقدم وهو هام جدا. قال وإنما الإمام أي الحاكم المسلم، إنما الإمام سوق من الأسواق، أي أن الناس يريدون. قال فإن كان من أهل الحق حمل إليه أهل الحق حقهم، يعني أن الإمام سوق يرد كل الناس، فأهل الحق يحملون الحق إلى هذا الإمام، وإن كان من أهل الباطل حمل إليه أهل الباطل باطلهم، يعني أنهم يأتونه فيلبسون عليه، لأن ابن الزبير كان إماما، كان حاكم مكة، فهو يريد أن يقول له احذر من يردك، فأنت مثل السوق يردها كل أحد.
كلمة جميلة جدا شيخنا. And then he goes on to explain this concept, and he advised him and he said, indeed the Imam, the leader of the Muslims, is a market from the marketplaces. What does this mean, and what was his intent by this? What he meant was that all of the people go, or all of the people have some issue or business with the leader of the Muslims. The people of truth, they will take the truth to the leader, and the people of falsehood, they will take their falsehood to the leader. And here Abdullah ibn az-Zubayr, he is giving his advice, because indeed he was a leader and he was a commander of the Muslims. So he is giving advice here based upon his experience.
الحسن البصري رحمه الله تعالى وهو من التابعين يقول كما في حلية الأولياء لأبي نعيم، يقول يا ابن آدم عملك عملك، يعني احفظ عملك لا تضيعه، عملك عملك، فإنما هو لحمك ودمك، فانظر على أي حال تلقى عملك، يعني يوم القيامة، لأنه معلوم كما في الحديث أن الإنسان إذا وضع في قبره أتاه إن كان من أهل الصلاح أتاه رجل حسن المنظر طيب الرائحة فيقول من أنت؟ فوجهك الوجه يجيء بالخير، قال أنا عملك الصالح. والذي عكسه على الضد منه يأتيه قبيح المنظر نتن الرائحة فيقول من أنت؟ فوجهك الوجه يجيء بالشر، يقول أنا عملك الطالح. لهذا يقول الحسن يا ابن آدم عملك عملك، يعني ابني على الإخلاص، لله ابنه على المتابعة، لا ترائي، لا تشرك، وأيضا لا تحدث ولا تبتدع. نعم.
And it's been reported in the book Hilyatul Awliya, a book that looks at the those who are close to Allah and those who are beloved to Allah. It's been reported that the scholar, the early Islamic scholar Al-Hasan al-Basri, he gave advice to the people and he said, O sons of Adam, your actions, i.e. preserve your actions and be careful about your actions, be diligent as it relates to your actions. For indeed, your actions are your flesh and they are your blood. And have a look and take care of what conditions you will face your actions, or you'll face your actions in, and take care over the form that your actions will take. And this is because it's been reported that the individual, when they die, they will come to the individual who performed righteous deeds and was upright in their faith. They will face, or they will meet someone with a very good appearance and is sweet smelling, who will give them consolence, and it will be said to them, or they will ask, who are you? And they will say, I am your good deeds. And the opposite is true. The individual who did not perform many good deeds and performed evil deeds, they will be faced by someone with an unattractive appearance and a repellent smell. And they will say to this individual, who are you? And they will say, I am your evil deeds that you carried out. So Al-Hasan al-Basri, he mentions your actions, so pay attention to them, highlighting the importance of two things. The first, having sincerity in our actions and doing them solely for the sake of Allah the Most High. And secondly, when we perform our actions, to perform them in conformity to the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him.
ثم قال الحسن البصري كلاما على نحو ما ذكر مالك بن أنس عن ذلك الفقيه الذي أوصى ابن الزبير، فقال إن لأهل التقوى علامات يعرفون بها: صدق الحديث، والوفاء بالعهد، وصلة الرحم، ورحمة الضعفاء، وقلة الفخر والخيلاء، وبذل المعروف، وقلة المباهاة للناس، وحسن الخلق. فهذه يعني من علامات أهل التقوى.
And then Al-Hasan, he mentions similar wording to that which we've seen in the previous narration, where he gave some of the signs and indicators of the people of taqwa, those who have patience, those who are truthful in their speech, those who fulfill their promises, those who keep good ties of relations with their family, with their kith and their kin, those who have mercy to those who are weak, and those who generally have good character.
ولذلك قال الله عز وجل في هذه الآية التي بدأنا بها ونختم بها بإذن الله: يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. فالله عز وجل بين أن الصيام فرض في شهر رمضان من أجل أن تحصل التقوى لأهل الإيمان فيزدادون منها حتى تمتلئ قلوبهم منها وتعمر بمقتضاها وهو الإيمان ومراقبة الله عز وجل، وعندئذ يكونون في محل رضا الرب عز وجل فينالهم منه توفيقه وهدايته وسداده ورحمته ومغفرته ورضاه. ومن حصل له ذلك فقد فاز الفوز العظيم. نسأل الله أن نكون جميعا منهم.
Ameen. Ameen. So we can see, and we return to the verse of the Quran that we started with, and we will end with this verse of the Quran, where Allah says, O you who have believed, fasting has been prescribed upon you, as it was prescribed upon those who came before you, so that you may attain this characteristic of taqwa, of fear of Allah and awareness of Him, as we have discussed throughout this lecture. So Allah explains within this verse that fasting is an obligation that He has prescribed upon the Muslims so that they can achieve this state, such that their hearts will fill with faith, such that their hearts will fill with consciousness of Him and awareness of Him. And when the slave has this, and when the slave's heart fills with awareness of Allah, then the slave gains the pleasure of Allah. And when the slave gains the pleasure of Allah, they are guided by Him. And those who are guided by Him, they have achieved and attained a great success. So I ask Allah the Most High to make us from those people who have this great success.
نعم. لعلنا نختم هنا، وإن كان ثم أسئلة
جزاكم الله خيرا.
اللقاء.
And we will stop here in terms of the lecture for tonight. And if there are any questions that we have, we can look at those and we can take those should there be any.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. Jazakallah khairan.
وإياكم.
Thank you, Justin. Jazakallah khairan, Akil. I do have a question here. There's someone who, I quickly did a YouTube one. There's only one on YouTube, the rest one text. How can I fast and still benefit from the holy month? I can't fast, sorry. So how can I still benefit from Ramadan?
شيخنا بارك الله فيكم، لا أستطيع ولا أقدر الصيام، فكيف أستفيد من الشهر المبارك؟
أولا نحتاج نعلم لماذا لا يستطيع، هل هو يعني بتوصية طبية أو لأنه غير معتاد على الصيام فهو لا يستطيع الصيام. فإن كان بتوصية طبية فهو معذور وعليه الإطعام عن كل يوم مسكين، ويحصل له الثواب ونتائج الصيام على الإيمان والتقوى تماما كما تحصل له لو كان قد صام، لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال كما في الحديث حين قفل راجعا من تبوك قال للصحابة إن بالمدينة أقواما ما سرتم مسيرا ولا قطعتم واديا إلا شركوكم الأجر ما منعهم إلا العذر. فكل من أراد العبادة وعجز عنها فإن الله عز وجل يعطيه أجرها وأثرها. وقد جاء في الحديث إن الله عز وجل يكتب للمؤمن أجر عمله إذا مرض أو سافر كما كان يعمله صحيحا مقيما. نعم.
So firstly, we should know the reason why the individual cannot fast. Is it due to a medical reason, or is it because they are not used to fasting? If they are not fasting due to a medical reason, then they are excused in the eyes of the Islamic legislation. But because they cannot fast, instead, they should feed for every day that they do not fast. They should feed every day a poor person. And by doing this, they will receive, by the will of Allah, the reward of those who have fasted. And they will also receive the benefits that the fasting individual will receive in terms of the purification that the fasting person undergoes. This is because they have a recognized and a deemed excuse for not fasting. And the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, when he came back from the battle of Tabuk, which was a place, he said to the companions, indeed, there are in Medina a people who, whenever you have traversed a plain, or whenever you have walked, and all the hardships that you have faced upon this journey, they have shared the reward with you in every sense. They have stayed in Medina because valid excuses have prevented them from coming. So we see that those who cannot partake in an action due to a valid, recognized and deemed excuse, then they will get the reward for those who have done it. So whosoever would like to perform an act of worship, but they are held back due to a valid reason, then Allah the Most High gives them the reward of those who do it. And it's been mentioned in the narration or the hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that indeed Allah, when the individual is sick or is on a journey, then Allah writes their reward as though they were in good health and resident. Jazakumullahu khairan wa baraka fikum, Shaykhana. May Allah reward you.
There was some questions, but you mentioned it already in the topic, and another one was about, again, fasting in Ramadan, but not being able to fast. But again, you've just answered that. So Jazakallah Shaykh. We just quickly mentioned that we're going to have live programs during Ramadan every day, inshallah, and the Quran for half an hour, and then a lesson from one of the Mashaykh for another half an hour, inshallah, as well as live appeals and live programs throughout the day. This will be held on social media under Islamic or Islam for Deaf platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and the like, inshallah. So subscribe and get notified whenever we do a show, inshallah. Jazakallah. Thanks again, Justin. Jazakallah, Sheikh and Akil. And inshallah, we'll meet again.
وإياكم جزاكم الله خيرا. عبد الحكيم عقيل and the interpreter, I didn't know his name.
Justin.
Oh, Justin, okay. Because I don't see the YouTube. I didn't see him. I know Justin. He was with us before.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, guys. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.